So today I wanted to talk a little bit about firebush and the hybrids that exist. And as you can see, the insects seem to receive all the cues that tell them this is a good food source. And it's just buzzing with insects just as much as a native firebush would be. So if that's as deeply as one really examines the relationship and effects on insects, it looks like this is equivalent. But the hybrids breed with our native species and are destroying it. One of the characteristics you'll see with the non-native is leaflets coming out in groups of 4. The native can have 4 according to the keys, but typically you see 3 leaves coming out. And you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4. It's pretty obvious just looking at this mature plant. One other characteristic you can see is the flowers will have yellow in the formation. So, you can see the yellow, it exists in the flowers while they're forming. The berries also will start out red and turn almost like a burgundy or blackish red as they mature, and you can see the coloration's a little off on these. Another characteristic is the leaf midvein, and you will see some red coloration to the stems and leaf midvein on the native that you see is completely absent here. And one of the final characteristics is you can rub the leaves and the native will be a little bit rough, almost like a super tiny grit sandpaper. If you continue rubbing the same leaf, you can rub these hairs off. So you want to change up leaves if you're struggling with palpating that. This one actually feels like it has a little bit of hair. So again, it's not one of these characteristics by itself that determines whether a firebush is native or not, but it's all of those characteristics must be present. The leaves in 3s or sometimes 4s. No yellow to the coloration during formation and development of the flowers. But of course the plant has to be flowering or fruiting for those characteristics to be noticeable or something you can look at. The native firebush is very near and dear to my heart. Continuing to keep these in your yard means that they're spreading pollen, the seeds are dispersed by birds, into the community around you. It's not like it just stays here in your yard. The pollen is transferred by pollinating insects to the people who are actually going out of their way to grow and preserve the native species. So I'm a huge opponent to growing any of these species, the upright porterweeds, the non-native and hybridized firebush. There aren't specifically studies looking at the nutrition. Here we have an example of one of the hybrids or exotic firebush. You can see the bright yellow coloration in the flower development. That is a telltale sign. The native will have some perhaps orange coloration that you would see on these flowers next to them developing, but none of this yellow. And if you look closely, for the 3 or 4, these are coming out in 3 here, but if you look lower where the mature leaves are, you can see 4 coming out of this node. So that is also a sign. You can feel the leaves, and if they feel rough, that is a sign of the native. You need all of these characteristics though to determine if it is a native. And then also there's a red coloration to the midvein. This one seemingly has that present to some extent, so I'm guessing that this is a hybrid of the native and some of the exotics, because it does have some of the native characteristics, but not quite all of them. The fruits also, when they're immature, start out more of a red and then turn this very dark purpley black on the native, but this is kind of a light coloration for early fruit development. It's off for the native. So native firebush, you will see some redness to the leaves. That would be one characteristic, although that's not necessarily in the key. you could rub the top of the leaf and you will feel some roughness, almost like a really fine sandpaper consistency almost. And if you keep rubbing this, you'll rub the hairs off and lose it. So change leaves if you're confused, but it's a very easy sign for me to say. What you can also see is you won't see any yellow in the flower formation in immaturity. You might see some orange in development, which you can kind of see a little bit in these flowers, but no yellow to speak of. You'll also notice that the flowers will not have a significant waist on them. They'll be narrow mostly all the way from the base to the end. You will also see leaves coming out in whorls of 3 from the stem, or 4, but typically 3. And when I see 4, it's a warning sign to look deeper for me personally. Also, with berry formation, they'll start red and turn to almost a black at full maturity. And then you will also notice that the mid vein has red in it. If there's no red here, it is definitely not native. So any one of these characteristics by itself, leaves of whorls of 5 in particular, is definitely non-native. 4 is maybe not. The red vein, if any of these features, a single one, is absent, then it is not native. It has to meet all of those criteria to be considered native. So hopefully that's helpful for some of y'all trying to navigate this and plant native species. In particular, it is a concern growing the non-natives of these because they crossbreed with the native species and hybridize, and that is destroying our native firebush species, which is spectacular and precious. And it's a host plant as well to a sphinx moth. So as we found with other non-native species being introduced to the environment, tropical milkweed in particular, some prunus, cherry tree species, studies have been done looking at how it affects the larva. And we see that some of these plants that are exotic or non-native, they don't have the same chemical makeup as our natives, and that the insect species have co-evolved with and adapted to. So you're introducing foreign toxicity into their system that shouldn't be there, right? And the insects, like, they're not smart. They don't know how to recognize this is their ancient food or not. There's chemical cues, there's tastes, fragrances, colors, some colors outside of the human spectrum of perception, like infrared. These cues tell them this is a plant source. And some of these ancient relatives, they still give off those cues, yet they contain toxins. So it's very important, in my opinion, to especially plant native host plants. I mean, it's important to plant native plants, period, but native host plants in particular require some extra attention for these reasons. And again, these hybrid, non-native firebush species, they are destroying our native species. So please remove them. We do offer a $1 bounty if you bring in a bare root specimen of the non-native or a hybrid, and we are happy to help walk you through that identification. If this seemed overly complicated, we've had to learn to make sure we're sourcing actual natives for our clients. But if you bring in a bare root specimen of this plant species, we will give you $1 credit towards any plant in our inventory, not just a specific replacement, but we will also give you a replacement if you wish at our nursery, Butterfly Habitat Restoration. Peace. Have a great day.